Hey, Sting for Tom Morgan.
Hi, this is Sting for Tom Morgan. That is awesome. I'm just going to keep that forever. Saturday night, awesome wrestling entertainment at Waynesboro High School. You're going to be coming into our territory. I hear a lot of country stars, and they talk about headlining stadium shows. Kenny Chesney more specifically. And then he's like, I kind of prefer the smaller bar scene and that sort of thing. You could easily headline WrestleMania this year if you really wanted to. Do you like touring at the smaller places now?
Yes, I do, and I'm glad to do it because I get to see some of my old buddies, some of my old running buddies, especially somebody like Lex Luger.
Of course,
he's in Buffalo now, and I'm in the Dallas area, so it's good to be able to connect with all these guys when you see them at these shows.
Now, you got a big break at the first ever Clash of the Champions when you wrestled Ric Flair. 45 minutes, right? Is that how long that match was?
45 minutes, yes.
No commercial interruption.
It was commercial-free, the first time any sporting event of any kind on television had ever gone that long commercial-free.
Well, I like to think of this match kind of like Rocky. The match ended in a draw. Flair got to keep the title.
Yeah, no, that's the very match that put me on the map, really. And I credit Ric Flair to this day and thank him for it because, that night he had the ability to make or break me, set the pace for a good 20, almost 30 years after.
When we talked to Ric Flair a few months back, I brought up that match, and I think he started crying, but I don't think it takes a lot for him to cry these days. So
he's very emotional these days. I've seen him quite a few times this year, and he's a great guy, though.
Absolutely.
I love Rick,
Sting on Morgan in the morning. He's going to be at AWE Waynesboro High School this Saturday. Let's talk about the NWO in the 90s. We got to go there. It was an awesome time in wrestling. They started at Bash at the Beach where Hogan turned into a bad guy, shocked the world, and all this trash was being thrown in the ring. And here's another question. This might be one of those, no, that's the first time I've heard this one. I heard a rumor that you were originally supposed to be the leader of the NWO.
Well, that's such a common question, and I honestly, there are things that I have forgotten, but I do not remember ever, being put in that position ahead of the NWO, especially in those days.
Right.
It was just right there on the hairy edge. Wrestling was changing; it was turning from the black and white babyface heel to the more, almost gray. Everything was beginning to turn gray, and I was still that white meat kind of, babyface poster boy for WCW. Mm-hmm. So I do not remember that.
You were this mysterious vigilante. I know you remember that, hanging up way up in the rafters.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how you did that, honestly.
My sphincter was tight every single time I did it, I promise you.
Oh, my gosh.
My sphincter muscle.
Yeah.
It was, I could tell you stories and unfortunately the tragedy that happened with Owen, some of the stories I probably shouldn't tell.
Sure.
But I mean, if people knew what was going on up there.
Yeah.
On a handful of occasions, oh my gosh! I mean, I put it this way: I was close to having a fatal accident one night. Chicago at the UIC Pavilion, and that was wow. I mean, I'm sweating right now telling you the story, and then coming out of a helicopter, and you got a Vietnam vet who's a pilot who says, Sting, by some chance your rope or your cord gets caught up in my blades, I'm gonna have to cut you loose.
Oh my gosh!
And I kind of chuckle a little bit, and he's looking at me with these cold eyes. I'm like, okay, you're not joking, are you?
No way.
I mean, I'm thinking, if it gets caught in the blade, we're both going down. But I guess he knew that if he cut me loose somehow, he'd at least save himself. Oh, man. So, I step out of the edge of the helicopter, and the helicopter swinging back and forth because of my weight, that's a weird feeling as well as you're hovering over the water in Florida and making your way over to, the ring.
And you had to have that same look on your face the whole time. stone cold look about you that really just gravitated toward me loving you as a wrestler because you were my favorite wrestler of all time. And you did that for a whole year. You didn't say anything at all. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you wrestle at all during that time period, or were they just building your character?
There was just a build of the character the whole way through. I mean, I was physically involved just about every single night, but not actual wrestling matches. No, I didn't wrestle until that Starrcade match against Hogan.
Yeah, and I bet, did it feel great to be back in the ring once you finally got to do that?
Heck yeah, man. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Now, let's talk about the present. You know, we're seeing guys like The Undertaker wrestle more and more. Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement. I know you get this question so many times. And I know that you had a very bad injury a few years back. I know that. But do you think, I know you want one more match. That's one thing. But do you think you have one more match left in you? Do you think WWE will allow that? Do you think the doctors will allow you to have that?
Yeah, okay. That's the key to the question right there at the very end of it, the doctors, you know, and I have not pursued that.
Okay.
But yes, I still would like that to happen and always wanted it to, but I would only consider one against one opponent, and that would be Taker, and that's it. You know, anyone else, I just at this point, why? You know, but I have always loved the idea of Sting Taker thing, and you know, I have so many ideas in my head on how to make it just a night that people would never forget.
Yeah.
And I've had some of these ideas for decades, and
what do you think about, like, as a general manager for Raw or SmackDown? Do you think that's a possibility with your schedule?
It's a possibility, but I wouldn't consider it. It's just something that, I guess for a time, because I was asked so much, I thought, well, maybe, but it's just never been in my blood to walk down that road and to play that part. And I think it would, I'm leaving what I'm leaving behind intact the way it is now. And I think if I were to attempt, some sort of manager or general manager type position, it would just kind of, it would just kind of tarnish it in a way.
Sure.
I'd rather people remember what they remember and not the general manager guy,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know this may be a long story, and if it's too long, I was going to ask you a good road story, but you have so many of them. Is there one road story in particular that you could share that was one of your favorites?
So many of them. Most of them I can't even tell. But
nothing to do with Ric Flair and his britches, please.
With the Steiner brothers. The Steiner brothers were both crazy. The way they drove, and I was in the cockpit of the car with both those guys. For so many years, and we'd have these wars as we traveled from town to town, and sometimes from state to state in a car. And boy, we'd have wars, water balloons, throwing stuff out, back and forth at each other, and wars down the road. And Rick Steiner, Scotty'd be driving down the road. We'd be going 75, 80 miles an hour down the interstate on our way to wherever we're going, and see up ahead of us Kevin Nash, Tony, I forget Tony's last name. He was a ring announcer at the time, and in a van, with about 6 guys in this van, and we'd come up 75, 85 miles an hour, Scotty right next to them on the driver's side, and Rick sticks out his head and opens up the car door on the passenger side. And these guys are screaming, and at night on another trip we're bumping them from behind, and you can see Kevin Nash and Rick Rude kind of ducking down low because they don't know who it is. They think it's somebody with guns or whatever.
Yeah.
I can remember being at the Mall of America in Minneapolis with, again, Rick Steiner driving, Lex Luger's in the car, Tom Zink, Brian Pillman. I mean, these are names.
Yeah.
Scotty Steiner. There were about 6 or 7 of us in this van, and it was frozen, cold. It was at night after the show. We had gone out to grab some dinner, and Rick Steiner goes through Mall of America parking lot, which is like just football fields of just nothing but pavement. And he stops. He puts the van in reverse, and he floors it as hard as he can. and Lex is freaking out, and Rick turns the steering wheel 360 degrees, and we start doing spins. We start spinning around.
Oh my gosh!
And Lex is freaking out. That's not funny. It's not funny. Let me out. Let me out. And of course, we're not going to let him out.
Right.
And we got up to 2, we got up to 3, 4, we got up to eight revolutions. Lex was green and wanting to puke, but oh man, there were so many times, so many good stories.